I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do, how we do it, and perhaps more importantly, why we do it. The Kirtland's Warbler Alliance was founded in 2013 with the goal of supporting conservation efforts for the Kirtland's Warbler. Our mission is simple: be a force for Kirtland's Warbler conservation. Our work includes working with local communities and stakeholders to help them understand why it's important that conservation efforts be continued, even though the Kirtland's Warbler is no longer considered endangered. We also work with state and federal lawmakers and policymakers on the same issues. Even though the Kirtland's Warbler is no longer on the endangered species list, it remains one of the most sought-after species birders want to see. Every year, people come to northern Michigan from all over the country and around the world to see Kirtland's warblers in their jack pine habitat. During their stays, they lodge in local motels, eat at local restaurants, and shop in local stores. We think there is more opportunity to promote the Kirtland's Warbler nationally and around the world, and look forward to working with communities to find ways to bring more birders and ecotourists into the area, get them to extend their stays, and encourage them to come back more often. Finally, we work with our partners to make sure the agencies are following through on their commitments to Kirtland's Warbler conservation. Why are we doing this when the Kirtland's Warbler is no longer considered endangered? When a plant or animal is removed from the endangered species list, isn't it supposed to be no longer in danger, right? Well, that was true before now. On-the-ground conservation work for the Kirtland's Warbler will be necessary for as far as we can see into the future, because the Kirtland's Warbler is different from every other plant or animal that has previously been removed from the endangered species list. As you likely have heard or will hear from other presenters today, the Kirtland's Warbler is a conservation-reliant species, which makes it different from every other species that has previously been removed from the endangered species list. The Kirtland's Warbler is the first conservation-reliant species to be delisted. Prior to the Kirtland's Warbler, endangered species were delisted because we knew that we could eliminate or control the specific threats that forced those plants and animals to be placed on the list. The Kirtland's Warbler is different because it depends on fire to renew its habitat. But today, there are too many people living in the jack pine. It's simply too dangerous to allow fire to run naturally across the landscape. We believe that since humans have changed the landscape, how it functions, we have a moral obligation to the Kirtland's Warbler. We have a moral obligation to make sure that we are supplying it with ample nesting habitat. That means we must continue to harvest and replant trees in regular rotation. This dependence on continuing human intervention on its behalf is what makes the Kirtland's Warbler conservation reliant. The idea of a conservation-reliant species was developed by J. Michael Scott, a professor at the University of Idaho. Scott developed this concept through his experience working to prevent the extinction of the California condor and various bird species native to Hawaii, like the akapa. Along the way, Scott came to realize that the endangered species list was not just a lifeline for many species, it was actually life support. The only way that these species would be able to move off and stay off the endangered species list would be based on continual human intervention. He also realized that governments could not do this alone and suggested that a new model for endangered species conservation be built, a model that would be built on public-private partnerships. The state and federal governments have made a commitment to conserve the Kirtland's Warbler, and they've done a pretty good job. But the Michigan DNR and the U.S. Forest Service are prohibited by law from doing certain things that might assist their conservation efforts. For example, they cannot actively fundraise or seek grants to supplement their budgets for conservation work. The result is continuing conservation efforts are limited. The agencies also cannot lobby Congress or state legislatures for extra funds or special dispensation on any matter. The bottom line is the conservation team has people who work for the state and federal government agencies, but the team has no money of its own to accomplish any of its goals. That's where the Alliance comes in. We work closely with the conservation team to help them accomplish their goals and identify gaps that hinder their effectiveness and help work to fill them. When I talk to the public, I sometimes get a skeptical but well-founded question. Why should we spend all this time and effort to conserve the Kirtland's warbler? What difference does one bird make? Is it really worth it? Well, here are 3 examples of why the Kirtland's warbler is important. It's a uniquely Michigan story. 95% of the population of the Kirtland's warbler nests here in Michigan. Like the Great Lakes, the automobile, and craft beer, the Kirtland's warbler is part of who we are as the people of Michigan. On the right is a monument built to the Kirtland's warbler on the lawn outside the Oscoda County Courthouse. On the left is the historical plaque at the rest area on I-75 south of Grayling that commemorates its comeback from the brink of extinction. It's our bird. It's part of who we are. As much as we might not like to admit it, we humans drove the Kirtland's warbler to the brink of extinction by lumbering the great northern forests in the late 19th century without consideration to the impacts. Then we refused to let the habitat regenerate itself naturally by extinguishing wildfires. Because we have changed how the ecosystem, we have an obligation to ensure the ecosystem stays healthy. The Kirtland's warbler inspires passion. This is the leg of Mike Petrushka, a member of the board of directors of the Kirtland's Warbler Festival and a loyal volunteer on behalf of the Kirtland's warbler. He led the cowbird trapping effort 15 years ago, and whenever there is a Kirtland's warbler tour, he's there to take people into the field to help them see and understand the bird. But Mike's not alone in his passion for the Kirtland's warbler. You share that passion, obviously, because you're here today. As I mentioned earlier, birders are passionate about the Kirtland's warbler. They come from all over the country and around the world to see it. And they are thrilled when they do. Okay, full disclosure, this is not a photo from a Kirtland's warbler tour in northern Michigan. This is a photo of birders at the biggest week in American birding, a birding festival in northern Ohio. But there's one Kirtland's warbler over there to the left in the brush on the shoreline of Lake Erie, and all these people have gathered around to get a glimpse of that one Kirtland's warbler. This is an example of how special the Kirtland's warbler is to birders. I'm not nearly as profound and poetic as Aldo Leopold, so don't look to me for an inspiring quote. But a few years ago, I wrote a book on invasive species in the Great Lakes. One thing I learned from my experience of talking with biologists is that every time you lose a species, every time a species leaves an ecosystem through extinction or extirpation, that ecosystem loses a little bit of its balance, making the ecosystem more prone to collapse from the impact of invasive species or a natural catastrophe. If the jack pine outwash ecosystem lost the Kirtland's warbler, the impact might not be felt right away. But if the Kirtland's warbler were not there to help control a future outbreak of the jack pine budworm, say, who knows what kind of damage might occur in their absence. So who are the people who are leading the effort to protect the Kirtland's warbler into the future? These people are members of the steering committee of the Kirtland's warbler conservation team. They are from the Michigan DNR, the Wisconsin DNR, the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bahamas National Trust, Canada Wildlife Services, non-governmental organizations, and academia. I would have been in this photo except for the fact that they needed someone to take it, and since it's my job to support the conservation team, well, if your passion for the Kirtland's warbler leads you to ask how you can help, I invite you to drop me an email and let's start a conversation. Maybe you'd like to join us for our annual Jack Pine Planting Day, which is always held the first Saturday of May 7th next year. We'll start advertising for volunteer sign-up in April. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to sign up for our quarterly newsletter. Email me at thekirtlandswarbleralliance@gmail.com to be added to our mailing list. One of the best ways you can make a difference is to make a donation to help us continue our work. So far, we've raised more than $125,000 to help pay for the identification and training of volunteers for June's Kirtland's Warbler census, complete a new video that will be seen by people taking a Kirtland's Warbler tour, and pay the salary of the new conservation team coordinator. There are lots of additional projects to support Kirtland's Warbler conservation on the docket. Maybe you have a great idea of your own that you'd like to share. I'm happy to listen. On behalf of the Kirtland's Warbler Alliance, thank you for your time this morning. Here's our contact information. Visit our website to make a donation. We look forward to hearing from you.